Greetings, Algo artisans. Did the IEA say that oil will be obsolete by 2030? Not so fast, Greenie. Well, that's not exactly what they said, but we will get into it right now. Okay, so we have an article here, and this is over at oilprice.com, and it says IEA and OPEC divergence on oil demand becomes too big to ignore. And basically you have two different agencies involved in oil that are in a disagreement as to how long oil will be relevant. It says Reuters this week reported that the divergence between IEA and OPEC demand numbers is the largest in 16 years. So we'll just read straight through the article here to get the basics, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the IEA and we're going to take a look at the oil chart as well. Okay, so it says here, ever since the International Energy Agency switched from a pure play information provider to an advocate of the energy transition, its forecasts about oil demand have shifted to increasingly reflect this advocacy. Okay, that's a very polite way of saying narrative is influencing their forecasts, right? So this has led to a growing divergence between IEA's and OPEC's outlooks on the future of the commodity, increasing the risk of confusion amongst analysts and investors. The question, who's right, has become a legitimate one. To begin with, it's worth noting that neither authority is completely impartial. OPEC has a vested interest in stronger global demand, so there may well be an overestimation bias in its outlooks. Yes, yeah, that's probably true too. I would say OPEC nations are certainly diversifying outwards, though. There are a lot of alternative energy moves in those nations. Now, this does seem to me that those alternative energy investments actually make sense. They're not necessarily pie in the sky type things. So I would want to trust OPEC a little bit more, but then again, that just goes along with my narrative, and I have to wonder if I'm dealing with confirmation bias, right? It does say here that the IEA, on the other hand, acts like it has a vested interest in the energy transition, which has led it to regularly underestimate oil demand. Its most marked departure from reality to date contained in the original net zero roadmap. This document came out in May 2021, and in that report, the IEA said there was no need for new oil and gas exploration as of that year because the energy transition was moving fast enough to make that redundant. It did not take long for the IEA to revise its view. In November of that same year, the agency called for more investment in new oil and gas exploration amid a risk of supply shortage. So it just goes on to kind of show how the IEA underforecast oil demand, right? Okay, so we have OPEC and we have the IEA, and we should probably look into, we know what OPEC is.
Thank God.
OPEC is a group of nations who produce oil, and the United States is not included, but it is a lot of Middle Eastern countries that we know of, and Russia is part of OPEC Plus, so there, Russia is involved, but Saudi Arabia is probably like the head or leader of OPEC, if you will, might be a de facto leader. I don't know that there is an official title there. Now the IEA, let's take a look at who they are. The IEA, the International Energy Agency, okay, and let's go to the About page to see, let's see who's in charge. Let's go with their executive director. Dr. Fatih Birol has served as the executive director of the IEA since 2015. They talk about meeting goals, obviously climate goals, safeguard energy security. It says that Dr. Birol took up his position after rising through the ranks of the IEA over 2 decades, joined as a junior analyst in the mid-1990s. It says here that he chairs the World Economic Forum's Energy Advisory Board. That tells you what you really need to see here. We know who the World Economic Forum is. They are the Great Reset. They are Klaus Schwab, they are Yuval Noah Harari, they are transhumanists, they are people who basically have openly talked about pushing for population reduction. And one sure way to have population reduction is to take away energy from the world, because energy is the primary input for everything, including food production. So if you rob the world of energy, then people will die. World Economic Forum finds population reduction to be an important thing. They want it. They vocally say they want it. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not some weird opinion. They want population reduction. They want you to eat bugs. They want you to have nothing and be happy by 2030. They want all these things. So why would I trust continuously incorrect projections about oil coming from them when they are always an underestimation and have had to be re-estimated? Now, OPEC, they actually make money based on their estimations. They're not interested in narratives. They're not interested in population reduction, right? They want to create supply to meet demand. So their productions actually have a financial component to it, right? This isn't any kind of pushing some agenda. I mean, maybe there is some, yeah, sure. I'm sure that having oil be used around the world does cause them to, make more money. But in reality, pushing oil demand around the world is not a very easy thing to do. Most of your, oil demand when it comes to factories and vehicles, it's very, very decentralized. I don't think it's very easy to use some silly projections, some faulty projections, some overestimation projections to try to push the world into using more hydrocarbons. It's just not realistic. So I certainly would trust OPEC a little bit more from a very practical regard, right? So let's take a look at the oil chart. Going back to at least the beginning of February, I've been telling people at Algo Factory that I believe there will be a breakout. Now, we've had oil sitting in this consolidation going back to November, really, and it became a very clear range, especially after January, right? And then it started to create this, you could say it's a bull flag. It's certainly a consolidation that occurred at the top of this very clear range, right? Very clear, high and tight flag. So, a breakout did occur. We've had price stay above this for about a day, right? Above the top of this resistance, above the top of this consolidation here for over a day. So one way to measure how high it can go is to use a Fibonacci extension tool on the impulse prior to the breakout. That takes oil to a most likely near-term price of 87.85, right? This is the 1.618 Fibonacci extension. And then we're going to go back and look at some structure to try to identify pertinent points when it comes to liquidity. The highest it might go on this impulse, of course, it can go a lot of different places after this impulse, but the current impulse, the highest I would take it would be about $90, maybe $90.50. It's already hit the 272 extension. So you're sitting at, 85.47, right? So those are some good targets based on Fibonacci extension. We can actually go back and look at the volume nodes on this most recent impulse down. So I'm going to map the most relevant impulse here is going to be from here to here, right? I'm going to map that impulse with a fixed range volume tool so that we can determine where most of the volume is, but I could almost guarantee you it's going to be where these two kind of consolidations on the way down occurred, these two, little mini ranges. But I bet you it's right maybe through the middle of those. Basically, I'm going to say at 86.52. That's just going to be my guess. Let's see how good that guess actually is. Okay, looks like the price is actually 86.97. So I was pretty close. 87, maybe 87.50. It's in there. Now that price is pretty close to the 618, which is 87.85, and we're looking at about $87. So I would definitely have a target. If I were long on oil, I would have a target at about $87. I might even front run 87 and go to like 86.90. So that's my oil target, 86.90, and I hope that this has been helpful. If you'd like to learn about how I'm able to determine these prices, how to use these tools, Fibonacci this, fixed range that, volume profiles, it's actually all pretty simple. It just takes a little bit of time to learn, but we teach all that stuff over at algofactory.tech. We also teach you how to build algorithms to help you trade, right? Now, we don't give any financial advice or investment advice, but we do help you build your own algos so that you can extract money from these markets. Sometimes, depending on your own style, it could be a few times a day, a few times a week, a few times a month, whatever works for you. At any rate, we're over at algofactory.tech. We hope to see you soon. Trade your job, upgrade your life. We'll see you on the next one.